I'm actually going to lock the center differential. And it's really easy to do. I mean, I don't know why people don't really use it, because it's easy to lock and it's much more stable when it's locked.
I think the problem is that people don't actually understand that, because they read the literature and it says permanent full-time four-wheel drive, but they don't quite grasp the system and its effect on the vehicle and the advantage of true four-wheel drive as opposed to all-wheel drive. Yes. I don't know how to differentiate the two, but the Defender performs. It's all right without the center differential lock, but then you take it on a gravel road and you lock that center differential and it changes the car. It really makes the huge difference in the performance of the car.
As it stops all that rolling, and it's stable on here. I don't know what we're doing on the gravel road, but we're doing 60 odd at the moment on the gravel road, and it's staying there. I think the word diff lock is one of the words. When they lock the center, the word diff lock, although it is a differential, I think if we just say putting it into a 50-50 zone and giving you true four-wheel drive on that one would be a better way of putting it, and people would then use it more often, because they're frightened. The word diff lock, they're frightened of it because they don't understand it that well. When a differential lock is on an axle, then it used in the wrong circumstances can damage the transmission. But yes, I agree with you that it's a misunderstanding of what it's doing and why one should lock it. But I mean, I always get a big smile on my face every time I climb into a Defender. I mean, I just think so much of them, and as quirky and so full of character as they are. You used to have Land Rovers. I used to have a Land Rover. I think we all went through that, and as the lad was saying, it's such a brilliant vehicle to really go overland with, because you can put stuff all over the vehicle. It's just so friendly to doing that, and you don't seem to mind to do it either. I'm just cautious about putting too much on the roof on a Land Rover. I like to, but any roof of any sort of vehicle, I like to keep them as light as possible. And when you really go off-road, then you can put a bit more on if you need that, sort of to have that extra fuel or extra water and stuff like that on that.
I've seen so many vehicles that have been badly loaded in terms of accessories that they become really quite uncomfortable to drive, and I've seen it probably more often with Defenders than other vehicles, but I've seen it with Land Cruisers. I've seen it with SUVs that have just got too much stuff too high up, and the vehicle becomes, the COG is thrown out, and the vehicle becomes, I think, actually quite dangerous. And I think the Land Rover Defender is susceptible to that because it is so friendly to adding accessories that one can get a bit carried away, and it's got a you've got to keep the center of gravity low on this vehicle because of the nature of the suspension. Otherwise it does get too top heavy and a little bit potentially dangerous. But I think there's a trend that is moving towards less weight. I think the weight issue is starting to be shouted a little bit louder, and people are starting to understand, well, there is a limit to how much kit I can put on my vehicle, and if I don't need it, well, I shouldn't actually put it on, because weight is everything. And if I have a vehicle with limited range, i.e. a small fuel tank, I'm going to have to trade some of that payload for fuel. In other words, I'm trading payload for range. So what am I going to remove from the vehicle to increase its range so I can keep the payload within safe parameters? And I think that's becoming more, the 4x4 enthusiast is becoming more conscious of it. What's nice, it's easy to put long-range fuel tanks into this vehicle.
You can carry water tanks. You can get extra tanks under your seat. It's easy to do on this vehicle. So if you can do that first rather than carrying on the roof, by all means doing that.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. Absolutely. And if you're putting on a roof rack, then weigh it, because the weight mounts so rapidly. When you start putting our tent on and a spare wheel on and a couple of jerry cans, that's a very heavy weight, very high up, and that's going to affect handling, both on-road and off-road.
I see a lot of people now sort of going down to just carrying one spare on that, and I'm tending to go with them on that, because a second spare, although it's nice to have, becomes very bulky and very heavy, especially if you've got to chuck it onto the roof rack, as you were saying. And the quality of the tyres that you get these days, we're getting very few punches out there.
It's true, very few.
Found that.
Absolutely, the quality of the tyres now is, we are getting far fewer punches, and I've been carrying 2 spare wheels for quite a few years now, and I actually recently asked the question, why am I doing this? I'm not getting any punctures. I'm not even needing the first spare. So I'm also questioning that wisdom. And we can, unless you split a tyre sidewall, we can repair a tyre without taking it off the rim. So, but the trouble is, when you damage a tyre, split it on the rocks, and then the tyre is wrecked, then you've got a problem, because then you have no spare.
Yes. That can become and getting tubes is not easy these days either.
Yeah.
Because you could put a big gate in and put a tube in, and you could limp home. So there's still a solution to that, but it does leave you sort of out there in the sticks.
I mean, when I was carrying 2 spares on my first solo Trans-Kalahari expedition, and when I lost my first tyre, I actually turned back, the sidewall was completely destroyed. The tyre was, I suppose I could have packed straw in it in desperation, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it was, and then from that moment on, didn't trust the tyre, and because I was doing a solo trip, actually abandoned the trip and did it again next year with better tyres, and also carrying 2, and had no tyre trouble at all. But I suppose having the 2 spares, being a solo expedition, was comforting insurance, even though I didn't cash in on it.
But I think it was wise, once you have lost one, to actually turn around on that one. You can always go there another day.
I just thought it was the prudent thing to do, and the solo expeditions, they do carry some risk, but I like to think of overlanding. There are risks involved, but manage the risks well, and the risks actually, it's not a high risk activity if you're sensible. And I was just trying to be sensible. One half of me wanted to carry on, and the other half of me said, be sensible. Don't get yourself into trouble where your life is being threatened. Come back another time, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, no, I think that was a wise thing to do, because it's so easy. I mean, you say, I've spent all this time and energy and money getting here, let me just push on. And that's where it all starts to go wrong on that.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's nice being in the Land Rover again and driving it.
It's like a comfortable old friend.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
They are actually comfortable in this situation. On that, it's